Namaskar and welcome to News Night. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. India's increasingly important leadership role was the focus as the President of Inter-Parliament Union, that's IPU, Pacheco, addressed the Parliament. Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Sanna Marin of Finland met virtually to discuss tech cooperation and more, updates on the COVID situation, poll-bound states as well, a look at the visit of leaders from the Biden administration to East Asia to Japan, all that and more. First, the headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Finnish PM Sanna Marin hold summit-level talks, new partnerships forged in ICT, mobile technology and digital education sectors. Memorandum of cooperation in the field of environment also inked. IPU President Pacheco addresses joint session of Parliament, describes India as a special friend of IPU that has played an important role in parliamentary diplomacy, emphasizes that India should get its due place in global order. Lok Sabha Speaker says no parliament should debate laws passed by legislatures of other nations and issues related to their sovereignty. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin make their global debut, hold 2+2 dialogue with Japan, strongly worded joint statement, singles out Beijing for its coercion and destabilizing behavior in the region. Both nations vow to push back against China's aggression. Union Cabinet clears setting up of new bank for infrastructure development with rupees 20,000 crore capital infusion. Development Finance Institution DFI expected to raise up to rupees 3 lakh crore. Institution will also enjoy tax benefits for the next 10 years. Finance Minister asserts decision to privatize banks is a well thought out one, assures that interest of existing employees will be protected at all costs, urges Rahul Gandhi to do his homework before levelling allegations. Parliament passes bill to raise upper limits for permitting abortions to 24 weeks in special cases. Railways Minister says investment into rail infrastructure and services is welcome, but states that Indian Railways will not be privatized. After Maharashtra and Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh takes steps to check the rise of COVID numbers. Night curfew imposed in Bhopal and Indore. 8 states reporting spike in fresh COVID cases. Maharashtra reports the highest rise with 15,000 new cases. And in cricket, India sets target of 157 runs for England in the third T20 in Ahmedabad. Virat Kohli's 77 not out sets the tone for India. No audience allowed in the stadium in view of COVID precautions. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi and PM of Finland, Sanna Marin, met during a virtual summit on Tuesday. Focus was on the immediate challenge of the pandemic and vaccine management. The two leaders also discussed key partnership areas, particularly in the space of new technologies in education, innovation, clean energy, quantum computing, and artificial intelligence. The two leaders also emphasized upon the importance of multilateral rule-based international order.
फिनलैंड और भारत दोनों ही एक रूल्स बेस्ड, पारदर्शी, मानवतावादी और लोकतांत्रिक वैश्विक व्यवस्था में विश्वास रखते हैं.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi stressing on joint commitment to democratic, rules-based and humanitarian world order, containing COVID-19, ushering global economic revival and tackling climate change were the big-ticket areas that Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin discussed at their first summit-level talks.
इस पैंडेमिक के दौरान भारत ने अपने डोमेस्टिक संघर्ष के साथ-साथ विश्व की जरूरतों का भी ध्यान रखा है. पिछले साल हमने 150 से अधिक देशों को दवाइयां और अन्य आवश्यक सामग्री भेजे थे और हाल में हमने लगभग 70 देशों को भारत में बनी वैक्सीन्स की 58 मिलियन से अधिक डोजेज पहुंची है।
I want to recognize the efforts of India in extensive vaccination program, and you are among the world.
Prime Minister Marin lauded Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership all throughout the pandemic. In her opening remarks, the Prime Minister spelled out the core areas of cooperation between both countries, such as utilization of new technologies in education, innovation, clean energy, quantum computing and artificial intelligence.
मुझे प्रसन्नता है कि आज हम आईसीटी, मोबाइल टेक्नोलॉजी और डिजिटल एजुकेशन के क्षेत्र में एक नई पार्टनरशिप घोषित कर रहे हैं।
I see that we have good commercial cooperation possibilities with India in the field of technology and research. I expect the fresh memorandum of cooperation between the Finnish and Indian ministers of environment.
Prime Minister Modi highlighted actions taken by India to meet its climate change commitments. He urged Finland to join the International Solar Alliance, ISA, and Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, CDRI.
रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी में हमने 2030 तक 450 गीगावाट इंस्टॉल कैपेसिटी का लक्ष्य रखा है। अंतर्राष्ट्रीय सहयोग बढ़ाने के लिए हमने इंटरनेशनल सोलर अलायंस और कोएलिशन फॉर डिजास्टर रेजिलिएंट इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर जैसे इनिशिएटिव भी लिए हैं।
Around 100 Finnish companies are actively operating in India in various sectors such as telecom, elevators, machinery and energy, including renewable energy.
The two Prime Ministers announced a high-level dialogue on education between the education ministries of both the countries. In this direction, the two leaders welcomed the proposal to renew the MOU between consortium of 10 Finnish universities and 23 IITs for the next 5 years. They also announced a digital partnership in future ICT, future mobile technologies and digital education. They announced a sustainability partnership involving renewable and clean energy, circular economy and sustainable mobility.
Around 30 Indian companies are also active in Finland, mainly in IT, auto components and hospitality sectors. This virtual summit will give a major push to India's Atmanirbhar Bharat campaign. Arun Sharma's report, DD India.
On to a big story. The President of Inter-Parliament Union IPU, Dwight Pacheco, is on a visit to India. He addressed the Parliament and hailed India's role in tackling the challenge of the pandemic, not just for itself, but for the entire world. Pacheco also lent support to India's bid for permanent seat at the United Nations. On the occasion, Lok Sabha Speaker reminded that democracies and parliaments must not interfere in the internal affairs of other nations and respect each other's sovereignty. Here's more.
President of Inter-Parliamentary Union, Dwight Pacheco addressed MPs in Central Hall of Parliament on Tuesday. This is the first visit of Dwight Pacheco as IPU President to India. Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla, Deputy Chairperson Rajya Sabha Harivansh, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Union Ministers, Members of Parliament and representatives from diplomatic community were present during the address. The IPU President lauded India's handling of COVID-19. He highlighted India's leadership role in providing crucial medical aid to various countries across the world during the pandemic.
India is one example to the world, because with your courage, you take very hard measures, but also because you don't look just for you. Before the vaccine and after the vaccine, you give concrete help to so many nations of our world.
Pacheco said India today represents a leading voice on the international forum defending democracy and multilateralism. He assured India of Portugal's support to the nation's bid to be a permanent member of the UN Security Council.
India should achieve the place you should have in all international levels. In IPU, where we will work together, side by side, every day, in all important issues. You have my word. In UN, United Nations, where Portugal supports the reform process and the inclusion of India as a permanent member of the Security Council.
Welcoming the IPU President, Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla spoke on the need to respect and protect parliamentary sovereignty of every nation.
मेरे विचार में किसी देश की संसद को अन्य लोकतांत्रिक देश की संसद द्वारा लिए गए सर्वप्रमुख निर्णयों या संसद से संबंधित विषयों पर चर्चा नहीं करना चाहिए। सभी लोकतांत्रिक देशों की संसदों को एक दूसरे की मर्यादा का परस्पर सम्मान करना चाहिए।
Pacheco also hailed India's growing role on the international stage. He said, India upholds multilateralism like IPU. The nation has a crucial role to play in achieving UN Sustainable Development Goals. Today, India is known as defender of democracy and rule of law. India has done remarkable work in fighting poverty and achieving development. Globally, India's opinion is respected and actions are viewed as significant. India will always have a special friend in IPU. During the program, Rajya Sabha Deputy Chairperson Harivansh highlighted India's rich democratic traditions.
India has had a very long tradition of democratic values and practices. We have ample historical evidence to show that republican forms of government, representatives and self-governing institutions actually worked in India as early as 3000 to 1000 years BC. Such a deep commitment of India to democratic values is amply reflected not only in our constitution but also in our working.
Pacheco also visited the Rajya Sabha while the proceedings were on to observe its functioning. President of Inter-Parliamentary Union is in India on a 7-day visit. The IPU is the global organization of national parliaments dedicated to promoting peace through parliamentary diplomacy and dialogue. India has been a member of IPU since 1949. With Shailendra Mishra in Delhi, Bureau Report, DD India.
That brings us to the issue in focus this evening. We're talking about India, upholder of democracy and multilateralism in the context of the IPU President's address. Two special guests are joining me in the program. Snehalata Srivastava, former Secretary General, Lok Sabha, and Shekhar Iyer, senior journalist. Good evening and welcome to both of you. Shekhar, if I can come to you first. If you look at the articulation by the IPU President, it's talking about India's leadership role in the world, right from democracy, preservation of democracy to management of the pandemic.
Indeed, I think the Inter-Parliament Union President's address to our MPs today from the Central Hall of Parliament was a very, very significant address that recognizes, rather acknowledges India's leadership in combating the pandemic, and also about India's role as a leading nation, particularly in the fight to preserve the climate, and as well as in developing technology for safer environment and other areas where we are seeing not just it is one country or one group, but overall there is a kind of recognition that in the last few years we have made tremendous progress, and our goal is clear, our march is going steadily, and that our capability and capacity is now recognized by all nations. Now, the most interesting part is Mr. Duarte Pacheco he belongs to Portugal. He was a member of Parliament, a Portuguese Parliament.
Right.
And the fact that we are soon going to see a India-EU summit in the summer of this year, I think around the first week of May. So that is going to see a lot of interaction between EU leaders and our Prime Minister. And today you just mentioned about the virtual summit between our Prime Minister and the Finnish leader, where also the same thing was reflected in terms of what we are doing for the world and how, despite our own challenges in combating the coronavirus, we have stepped forward and offered medicines and other essential medical supplies to so many countries.
Right. Sneha ma'am, if I can come to you, a part of the deliberations in the Parliament today were also about the manner in which India's democratic traditions are also led by the youths, by women of the nation. We also know you as the first woman Secretary General of Lok Sabha. From your own experiences, ma'am, and the reflections of Mr. Pacheco, the IPU President, how do you see women and the youngsters have strengthened the democratic traditions of the country?
I would like to first give the background to the viewers about the International Parliament Union. It's a very unique organization which was founded by the two Nobel laureates. One was from the France and one from UK. One was Mr. Creamer and one was Frederick Passy. And this organization is basically strengthening the democracy in Parliament and exchanging the views of parliamentarians. And I, as Secretary General of Lok Sabha, attended many meetings of IPU, whether it is regional meetings or its headquarter meetings, which is done biannually in Switzerland, Geneva. And I find that they draw a lot of inputs from women and girls and younger generation, and have various platforms to make their views shareable and use them in their strategy and policies. So I find during my interactions and during deliberations of between the parliaments and the parliamentarians, the focus on these two groups, and which will strengthen democracy and will ultimately will have very far-reaching effects.
Right. Shekhar, how do you also see this as an apt moment and opportunity for Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla to talk about the need to respect sovereignty of each and every parliament? Particularly, we know in the past weeks the controversy around UK Parliament taking up farm laws related issues that concerns India. It's India's internal matter, but the occasion was important to make that point.
Absolutely, I think Om Birla ji, completely drew the line.
We're trying to connect to our guest Shekhar. There seems to be a technical issue there.
When both the countries are...
Yes, Shekhar, I think you're back with us. Yeah.
Democratic country. Yeah, I mean, nobody should be sitting in judgment. Now, I would like to, draw attention to the fact, just a few days ago, our External Affairs Minister, Jaishankar ji, also made a similar point where the self-appointed custodians, are not willing to accept the fact that India is under a new leadership and is not, following the kind of thing with the game which they want to play. Therefore, they constantly pass these kind of rankings that, India is going down in the democracy index and things like that.
Right. And Snehata ma'am, the role of IPU, if we were to understand from you, in ensuring this respect is an active engagement between parliaments of different countries, that the respect is there, the interference in internal matter is rejected. How do you see that point, and how is that idea also formulated and put forth by IPU?
You see, they have the various bodies and the council committees, and through which any proposal which is sent to them, like the one we were referring.
Right.
I remember our honorable speaker had sent a letter to IPU President in the night, and by the morning we had the response from the then President IPU, Ms. Gabriela Cuevas, where it was taken up, and it was the unanimous kind of communication or decision in there that the interference in one parliament to another parliament is not welcome.
Right. And Shekhar, India as the defender and promoter of multilateralism was one of the key statements made by the IPU President. How do you see a key aspect, a strategy aspect in the region as well, not only for peace and stability, but also deal with the pandemic, as you mentioned?
Absolutely. Particularly we have seen how in terms of multilateralism, India has also been making a case that the UN Security Council should be broadly reflect the new economic order and the changes that are taking place. And today we saw the IPU President come out in full support of India's, membership of the UN Security Council. And so,
right.
So therefore, what is important. So what is important is that the kind of role India plays. Whether just now you saw the Quad summit, which was very unique in itself, where the heads of state of the 4 countries, including India, came together to deal with the issue of pandemic, and where we are going to see that they have recognized India's capacity to produce the vaccines that are required for in the US or in other parts of the world. So in every multilateral forum, we are seeing the role of India, the leadership of India is being recognized today. Therefore, even this support that is coming, that India should get its rightful place in the UN Security Council, also flows from what we are today as a country and as a nation.
Right. And Snehlata ma'am, finally, India's role in achieving sustainable development goals was also highlighted in the deliberations today. Again, in the context of IPU, help us understand how does it put together the effort of nations and parliaments in achieving these common goals that lie ahead of the international community?
Yes, they have a very high level committee to basically review the sustainable development goals, and there are a number of regional conferences on this issue. In fact, in Maldives last year or so, I think in 2019. There was a conference where we had discussed the sustainable development goal, and India, having worked very in lot of detail on sustainable development goal by Niti Aayog, and all the indexes and the objectives, etc., have been broken into various kind of parameters,
right.
And it's amazing if any country, when we had projected and presented all that. In fact, all the Asia, South Asia region countries were ready to take all those learnings from us. And in fact, if I can add that even Pakistan was ready to come on board and discuss with, and I was requesting us to send a team.
Right. On that note, Snehlata Srivastav, Shekhar Iyer, thanks very much for joining us in Newsnight and sharing your perspective. And in a big boost to infrastructure development in the country, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announced setting up of Development Finance Institution, DFI, as was planned in the Union Budget for 21. There will be an initial capital infusion that will stand at around rupees 20,000 crore. DFI is expected to raise long-term funds for infrastructure development in the country.
The Union Cabinet has cleared the setting up of a national bank to fund infrastructure and developmental activities in the country. The Finance Minister said that a Development Finance Institution, DFI, will take up measures for financing long-term infrastructure and development projects in the country. Capital infusion will be of about 20,000 crore rupees. Initial grant will be of 5,000 crore rupees to be provided in this year's budget. There will be certain tax benefits to be given for a 10-year period. The government further plans to issue securities for DFIs that will reduce its cost of funding. This will in turn have a positive impact on the bond market in India. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman thanked Prime Minister Narendra Modi for his constant gentle nudge on setting up a development finance institution.
The Cabinet has taken a decision to set up a development finance institution through which we will have an institution, an institutional arrangement which will help in raising long-term funds the budget provides for the initial amount. I had announced it in the budget saying capital infusion from our side would be about 20,000 crores and initial grant of 5,000 will also be made, and this year itself capital infusion is 20,000 crores. Additional increments of the grant will also be made within the 5,000 limit that has been given to the finance minister. And through this, we expect to raise considerable amount using this lever from the market.
In response to a media query, the finance minister assured that not all banks will be privatized. She added that wherever privatization happens, the interest of bank employees in those public sector banks will be protected.
The interest of the workers, interest of those who have put in services over the decades will absolutely be protected. Whether it is their salaries, whether it is their scale, whether it is their pension, it will all be taken care of. And above all, the first premise that I would like to put before you is even when we speak of privatization or disinvestment, we recognize that each one of those units perform for the economy. So if there is a coal unit or a thermal unit.
Countering Congress leader Rahul Gandhi's tweet on privatization of banks, the finance minister blamed that the previous UPA government is responsible for the deteriorating condition of banks.
Today, public sector banks are loss-making and prompt corrective actions are bringing them out because of the telephone banking which happened during his time. His daddy would have probably nationalized the banks, but nationalizing of loss in the banks was during UPA's time. And I would want to add one more. Nationalizing corruption is what they did.
With the merger of several PSU banks, the central government plans to move towards reducing the government's stake in them so that their functioning could be improved and participation of investors could be increased. The decision to set up a separate bank to fund infrastructure projects will have far-reaching impact on the development journey of the country. Bureau Report, DD India.
Now let's take you through the latest developments from the poll-bound states. BJP star campaigners held multiple rallies in Bengal, while Mamata Banerjee interacted with the public in Bankura. Tamil Nadu Chief Minister Edapadi Palanisamy is starting storm election campaign from Salem. Former Congress leader PC Chacko joined the Nationalist Congress Party in the presence of party chief Sharad Pawar. Here's a roundup.
Both houses of parliament witnessed smooth conduct of proceedings on Tuesday. Several important issues were raised during the day. Members' questions were answered during the question hour in Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha. Congress and the government on Tuesday engaged in a war of words in the Lok Sabha over sedition cases, with the opposition party alleging stringent law is being misused. Drawing a sharp retort from Minister of State for Home G. Kishan Reddy, who asked it not to lecture others on democracy, Reddy slammed the Congress party on the issue of violation of human rights. Replying to a question by Congress MP, the minister said the Modi government has maintained the figures of sedition cases separately, unlike the earlier Congress regimes.
सेडिशन केस के बारे में जब कांग्रेस सरकार थी, अलग कोई डाटा नहीं रखे हैं, वो पूरा जो आईपीसी क्राइम्स रिकॉर्ड्स रखते हैं उसमें ही मिलाकर रखे थे। हम गर्व के साथ बताना चाहते हैं, मोदी सरकार आने के बाद जो सेडिशन केसेस का अलग डाटा 14 के बाद हम ही अलग डाटा देश के सामने रख रहे।
Replying in the Lok Sabha, Union Minister for Railways Piyush Goyal assured that Indian Railways will not be privatized. Dispelling all doubts, the minister alleged that fears raked up by the opposition are unfounded.
मैं स्पष्ट कर दूं, भारतीय रेल कोई कभी प्राइवेटाइज नहीं होगी। भारतीय रेल भारत की संपत्ति है, भारत की रहेगी, भारत के लोगों की रहेगी।
On the other hand, in the upper house, Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman informed the Raj Sabha that the Members of Parliament Local Area Development Scheme Fund for 2019-20 had been released by the Ministry of Finance and the funds have been sent to the districts. However, the Finance Minister made it clear that no new MP-led funds will be given in the years 2020-21 and 2021-22 due to the coronavirus pandemic. In response to a question, Minister of State for Finance Anurag Thakur said that inflation was under control over the last 7 years, while MSP for farmers has been increased.
सरकार के पिछले 7 वर्षों में महंगाई दर औसतन कम रही है और जितना रहना चाहिए उसके आसपास रही, लेकिन इसके बावजूद सर हमने एमएसपी के दाम जहां पर किसानों के लिए बढ़ाए तो दलहन तिलहन का उत्पादन हिंदुस्तान में ज्यादा बढ़ा रहा, इंपोर्ट भी कम करनी पड़ी.
Replying to a discussion on the working of the Jal Shakti Ministry, Gajendra Singh Shekhawat said that work is underway in projects worth 1.91 lakh crore rupees under the flagship Jal Jeevan mission. He said that the centre is in touch with the state for effective implementation of projects. Parliament has passed the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Amendment Bill 2020, with the Rajya Sabha approving it on Tuesday. Lok Sabha had passed the bill in March last year. The bill provides for an outer limit of 24 weeks for medical termination of pregnancy. The limit is in sync with the advancements in medical technology that allows for the removal of fetus at a relatively advanced stage of pregnancy. With Parliament team, Bureau Report, DD India.
Those were some updates from the Parliament. Government and Congress traded charges over sedition cases in Lok Sabha, and the fact that railways will not be privatized also was an important statement made in the Parliament. Let us now take you through the latest developments from the poll-bound states. BJP star campaigners held multiple rallies in Bengal. Mamata Banerjee held interaction with the public in Bankura. Tamil Nadu Chief Minister Edappadi Palaniswamy is all set for his election campaigning from Salem, and former Congress leader joining PC Chako made headlines. Nationalist Congress Party is joined in the presence of the party chief Sharad Pawar. Here's more.
Battle continued on Tuesday for 294 seats of West Bengal Legislative Assembly, where on one hand BJP fielded its best players with Defence Minister Rajnath Singh lashing out at state government in Daspur. On the other hand, BJP chief JP Nadda held a massive roadshow in Bishnupur. Meanwhile, Mamata Banerjee of Trinamool Congress led her front in Bankura, where she interacted with public. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh in a rally took a dig at Mamata Banerjee, saying that it was corruption all around in West Bengal because of TMC's misdeeds. He also refuted any allegations surrounding her leg injury.
चारों तरफ हिंसा ही हिंसा, बड़ी संख्या में लोग मारे जा रहे हैं. किसी भी मुख्यमंत्री की यह जिम्मेदारी होती है अपने राज्य में वह हिंसा को रोके.
In a show of strength ahead of the assembly polls, BJP President JP Nadda conducted a roadshow in Bishnupur. In his address, BJP President raised the issue of political violence and promised to work towards the development of the state.
बंगाल की जनता ने तय कर लिया है, टोलाबाजी का खेला शेष होएगा जे, तुष्टीकरण खेला शेष, कॉटमनी खेला शेष, सब चीजों का खेला शेष हो गया है. अब लोग भारतीय जनता पार्टी के नेतृत्व में असूल परिवर्तन के लिए चल पड़े हैं. इसको हमको जहां नो कटमनी, नो टोलाबाजी, नो तुष्टीकरण, सबका साथ, सबका विकास, सबका विश्वास.
2 days after the BJP announced it was fielding journalist and Rajya Sabha member Swapan Das Gupta among its candidates for the upcoming West Bengal Assembly elections, Trinamool Congress MP Mahua Moitra has said he could be disqualified for filing nomination as a BJP candidate under the Constitution's 10th schedule. Following this, former MP resigned from the Rajya Sabha. He said that he hopes to file his nomination as BJP candidate for the Tarakeshwar Assembly seat in the next few days. Meanwhile, West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee recited Chandi Path at the rally in Bankura.
Farmers have been protesting for 6 months now. However, the ministers are not holding talks with them. All the ministers are here in Bengal, where they have booked hotels and conspiring to kill me, destroy TMC, and how to file cases against TMC with the help of EC.
In the meantime, nomination papers of the 28 of 408 candidates for the second phase of Assam Assembly elections were rejected during scrutiny. A total of 408 candidates had filed their nominations for the 39 constituencies going to polls in the second phase on April 1st. Going south, battle has heated up for 234-member assembly elections with the chief minister and the leader of the ruling AIA-DMK, Idapati Palanisamy, starting a 2-day stormy election campaign which will start from Salem in 17 districts of the state. Meanwhile, Congress party promised employment to the youth and offered tax exemptions for startups and new businesses as it released its manifesto for the upcoming assembly elections in Tamil Nadu. As Kerala Health Minister K.K. Shalja filed her nomination papers for Mattanur Assembly constituency, Congress leader and former Kerala CM Ommen Chandy also filed nomination for Puthupalli Assembly constituency. And in an interesting turn of events, former Congress leader P.C. Chako joined Nationalist Congress Party in the presence of party chief Sharad Pawar. However, it will be interesting to watch the political parties fight over the highest position in 5 states. Bureau Report, DD India.
And after Maharashtra and Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh takes steps to check the rise of COVID numbers. Night curfew has been imposed in Bhopal and Indore. 8 states are reporting spike in fresh COVID cases. Maharashtra reported the highest rise with some 15,000 new cases. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will chair a meeting with chief ministers of various states to take stock of the COVID situation in the country.
With the surge in COVID-19 cases in Maharashtra, the centre has cautioned the states. Union Health Secretary has warned that Maharashtra was at the beginning of a second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. In a letter to the Maharashtra government, the Union Health Secretary asked the state to focus on containment strategies and to scale up the pace of vaccination campaign, especially in districts witnessing a sharp increase in infections. Maharashtra has reported the highest daily new cases at 15,051. Meanwhile, Maharashtra government has issued new COVID-19 guidelines. All cinema halls, single screens and multiplexes, hotels, restaurants to operate on 50% capacity. No social, cultural, political, religious gatherings to be allowed. Not more than 50 people will be allowed to be present only for the purpose of weddings. Not more than 20 people will be allowed to be present for the purpose of performance of last rites. All offices except related to health and other essential services shall work with 50% of attendance. In view of the recent spike in coronavirus cases, the Gujarat government has decided to enforce the night curfew in 4 major cities of the state and extended its timings by 2 hours with effect from March 17th in a bid to contain the sudden surge in COVID-19 cases. The curfew will now remain in force in Ahmedabad, Surat, Vadodara and Rajkot from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. from 17th of March till the 31st of this month. Meanwhile, the remaining 3 T20 cricket matches between India and England in Ahmedabad will be held in empty stadium.
कोरोना की वर्तमान परिस्थिति को ध्यान में रखते हुए गुजरात क्रिकेट एसोसिएशन के मैनेजमेंट ने आगामी 16, 18 और 20 को खेले जाने रही T20 की मैचों बिना प्रेक्षकों के ही खेले जाएगी.
In view of a rise in coronavirus cases, the Madhya Pradesh government has also issued new guidelines. Travellers from Maharashtra must undergo 7 days of home quarantine. Goods trucks from Maharashtra will be allowed after the thermal screening of drivers and others. Markets in 8 cities, Jabalpur, Gwalior, Ujjain, Ratlam, Burhanpur, Chindwara, Betul, Kargon to shut at 10 p.m. from March 17th. A night curfew in capital Bhopal and also in Indore from March 17th. In the meantime, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will chair a meeting with chief ministers of various states to take stock of the COVID situation in the country.
माननीय प्रधानमंत्री लगातार कोविड के कालखंड को आप पीछे देखिए, दर्जनों बार उन्होंने विभिन्न प्रकार के तमाम मुद्दों को लेकर के कोविड से जुड़े हुए माननीय मुख्यमंत्री जी से भी, राज्यों के मुख्यमंत्री जी से भी, सभी राज्यों के जितने भी प्रमुख लोग हैं पदाधिकारी सम्मत रहते हैं और प्रधानमंत्री जी ने एक-एक चीज की चिंता की है बारीकी से.
India is scaling peak after peak in its COVID-19 inoculation drive. More than 3,29,47,000 vaccine doses have been administered till now. Union Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan has assured that the export of COVID-19 vaccines to other countries is not being done at the expense of Indian citizens. In its collaborative fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, India has scaled several peaks. The cumulative total of recovered patients has crossed 1 crore 10 lakh. With this, the recovery rate currently stands at 96.65%. The fatality rate stands at the lowest in the world at 1.39%. Nitendra Singh's report, DD India.
And next, some more news and updates from across India in National Wrap.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi today received a copy of the book Chandraprabha, the Iron Lady of Assam, penned by Hirani Vora. PM informed in a tweet that the book chronicles the life of great Chandraprabha Saikyani, who made noteworthy contributions toward Assam's progress, social reform and empowerment of women. Suspended API Sachin Wase has moved the Bombay High Court, challenging his arrest by the National Investigation Agency in connection with the recovery of an explosive-laden car next to Mukesh Ambani's residence. Opposition BJP and Maha Aghadi have traded charges on the suspension of the police officer. With the mounting pressure over Wase, NCP leader Ajit Pawar clarified that the alliance parties are working together for the development of Maharashtra. BJP has slammed Shiv Sena for advocacy of Wase. The opposition BJP in Rajasthan protested in Wales of the House after Speaker CP Joshi rejected adjournment motions pertaining to alleged phone tapping of public representatives. The BJP had on Monday demanded the resignation of Chief Minister Ashok Gehlot on moral grounds after government accepted the tapping of phones in the interest of public safety and order. BJP leader Rajvardhan Singh Rathore has questioned the Congress over the phone tapping issue in Rajasthan. Rathore said that, contrary to its statement, Congress is misusing Telegraph Act and tapping the opposition leaders in Rajasthan. Security forces achieved a major success when CRPF neutralized 4 Naxals in an encounter in Gaya district of Bihar. According to CRPF, 3 AK-47 and rifle have been recovered from the spot. The Army on Tuesday decommissioned 2 of the longest-serving artillery systems, the 130 mm self-propelled M46 Capsule guns and 160 mm the Ampola mortars from service at Mahajan field firing ranges.
And Prime Minister Narendra Modi had a telephonic conversation with Prime Minister of Portuguese Republic Antonio Luis Santos da Costa. The two leaders reviewed the COVID-19 pandemic situation, noted the importance of quick and equitable distribution of vaccines for ending of the pandemic. PM Modi briefed PM Costa on India's vaccination drive, as well as the support extended by India to more than 70 countries so far. He assured that India would continue supporting the vaccination efforts of other countries to best of its capabilities. Both leaders reviewed bilateral relations and expressed satisfaction at the positive momentum in the India-Portugal partnership in the last few years. They also reviewed preparations for the first ever India-EU leaders meeting scheduled to take place under Portuguese presidency of the EU in Porto in May of 2021. That was Prime Minister Modi having a telephone call with PM of Portugal, Antonio Luis Santos da Costa. Moving on to our next story, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be visiting Bangladesh on March 26th and 27th. This visit is in connection with the commemoration of 3 epochal events: Mujib Borsho, the birth of centenary of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, 50 years of establishment of diplomatic ties between India and Bangladesh, and 50 years of Bangladesh's War of Liberation. Prime Minister had last visited Bangladesh in 2015. During the visit, PM will attend the National Day program of Bangladesh on March 26th as the guest of honor. The program of Prime Minister, apart from holding bilateral consultations with PM Sheikh Hasina, will also include a call on President of Bangladesh, Mohammad Abdul Hamid. The visit of Prime Minister to Bangladesh will be the first visit to a foreign country since the outbreak of the COVID pandemic. The highlights the priority that India attaches to Bangladesh. And US Secretary of State Antony Blinken warned China against using coercion and aggression as he sought to use his first trip abroad to shore up Asian alliances in the face of growing assertiveness by Beijing. His visit to Tokyo with Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is the first overseas visit by the top members of the Joe Biden's cabinet. The visiting leaders called on Japanese PM Yoshihide Suga.
U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken called for deeper economic and security ties with Japan during his meeting with his Japanese counterpart on Tuesday. Blinken said Tokyo and Washington shared commitment to democracy, human rights and rule of law. The Japanese Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi said he had agreed with his U.S. counterpart to strongly oppose China's attempt to change the status quo in the East and South China Seas and to closely cooperate with each other on the matter.
We're also standing together in support of our shared values. We believe in democracy, human rights, the rule of law, because we've seen in our own countries that those values actually make us stronger, and because they're under threat in many places, including in the region, whether it's in Burma or whether in different ways China.
We agreed that we strongly oppose China's attempt to unilaterally change the status quo in the East and South China Seas. We shared serious concerns over China's Coast Guard law and agreed that we will closely cooperate with each other and with like-minded countries.
U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin met with his Japanese counterpart, Defense Minister Nobuo Kishi, in Tokyo. The U.S. Defense Secretary said that the U.S.-Japan alliance was strong and that the two nations would work together towards achieving a free and open Indo-Pacific region, while Kishi said that the security environment in the Indo-Pacific region was becoming severe. The U.S. Secretary of State Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin will also visit Seoul and South Korea on March 17 and 18. In a related development, North Korea has criticized ongoing military drills in South Korea and warned the new U.S. administration against causing a stink if it wants peace. South Korea and U.S. troops began a joint springtime military drill last week. U.S. Secretary of State Blinken and Defense Secretary Austin had landed in Tokyo on Monday, starting a 4-day visit to the region to strengthen deeper economic and security ties with Japan. Their visit to Tokyo and Seoul follows a virtual summit last week of the leaders of the United States, Japan, Australia and India, the Quad Alliance. World Today Desk, DD India.
And United Nations Special Envoy for Syria in his briefing to the Security Council on the conflict said it will be remembered as one of the darkest chapters in recent history. Speaking on the day that marked 10th anniversary of the start of the civil war, he noted it is and he said that he regrets that the UN has been unable to help end the suffering of the Syrian people. India, meanwhile, has said that it is convinced there can be no military solution to the Syrian conflict.
The Syrian tragedy will go down as one of the darkest chapters in recent history. The Syrian people are among the greatest victims of this century.
As Syria marks a decade of civil war, UN Special Envoy on Syria expressing profound regret on part of the global body for not being able to mediate an end to the conflict yet. India's permanent representative to the UN, Ambassador T.S. Tirumurti, while speaking at the UNSC discussion on Syria, said India is convinced that there can be no military solution to the Syrian conflict.
India firmly believes that long-term security and stability in the region can only be achieved by preserving the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Syria. We also remain convinced that there can be no military solution to the Syrian conflict and reaffirm our commitment to advancing a Syrian-led and a Syrian-owned UN-facilitated political process in line with the UN Security Council Resolution 2254.
India has always reaffirmed its commitment to advancing Syrian-led, Syrian-owned and UN-facilitated political process, preserving the unity, sovereignty and territorial integrity of Syria. Further, Ambassador Tirumurti also expressed concern to prioritize the COVID-19 vaccination program in Syria, including through the COVAX initiative.
The COVID-19 pandemic has further compounded the situation, posing serious challenges to fragile health infrastructure. We call upon the wider UN system, in particular the WHO and OCHA, to prioritize the vaccination program in Syria, including through the COVAX initiative.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres last week had said that Syria is a living nightmare where about half the children have never lived a day without war and 60% of the Syrians are at the risk of going hungry. Syria's civil war began during the Arab Spring in 2011 as a peaceful uprising against the country's then president Bashar al-Assad. Russia had then backed Assad while the United States had supported the opposition. The conflict has since escalated, shattering the lives of Syrians, destroying cities, straining global politics, and spurring diplomatic efforts that are constantly questioned as the world is witnessing the horrors of the ongoing warfare. Bureau Report, DD India.
The European Union's medicines regulator has said there was so far no indication that AstraZeneca vaccine causes blood clots, urging countries to keep using the jab after many suspended distribution despite new surges in infection. The suspensions have led to intense debate over whether it was prudent to put AstraZeneca inoculations on hold just as vaccination campaigns begin to gather pace in many countries. Experts at both World Health Organization and EU regulator EMA are meeting to discuss the vaccine, with European agency expected to publish conclusions by Thursday. AstraZeneca, short among the cheapest available, was billed as the vaccine of choice for poorer nations, and clot reports have had an impact beyond Europe. And US manufacturer Moderna has said it has started COVID-19 vaccine trials for children aged 6 months to under 12 years old, with plans to enroll about 6,750 participants. US health authorities say that fewer children have been sick with COVID-19 as compared to adults, but they can be infected and can spread the virus as well. Most infected children have mild symptoms or no symptoms at all. School officials across the US are under pressure to fully reopen as soon as possible, but many say they need portable classrooms or shorter school days to meet the social distancing rules. And the third T20 of the 5-match series between India and England is currently underway in Ahmedabad. England batsmen are at the crease to chase the target of 157 to win till the last reports came in. Visitors were at 84 runs for the loss of 2 wickets. India once again found themselves in familiar territory when they were asked to bat first. India tottered at 24 runs for the loss of 3 wickets at the end of power play. Then a 40-run stand between Kohli and Pant brought back India into the game before a brain fade from Kohli on a run-off overthrow slaughtered Pant's wicket. Iyer too did not last long, though Kohli continued to bring up consecutive 50 for him. On the other side, England though have been brilliant with the ball at the start, but they failed to finish the innings on a high. This is one thing that Morgan and his boys would look to correct at the earliest. Mark Wood, barring that last over of his, was superb as he bagged some 3 wickets. Adil Rashid, though did not pick up any wickets, was quite economical in his 4 overs. Jordan and Archer too bore the brunt of Kohli's onslaught at the deaths, but still they were good as Jordan picked the wicket of the last ball of the Indian innings. Nominations for the Oscars, the highest film honours, were announced on Monday by actress Priyanka Chopra Jonas and her husband Nick Jonas from London through a virtual event. David Fincher produced spirit drama Mank is leading the Academy Awards nominations with some 10 nominations. With COVID-19 pandemic stalling film production almost entirely last year, Oscar nominations 2021 have managed to both disappoint and surprise in a few categories. The awards will be presented on April 25th. More in this report.
David Fincher helmed period drama Mank is leading the Oscar nominations with 10 nods, including for Best Picture, Director, and for actors Gary Oldman and Amanda Seyfried. The Netflix 1930s Hollywood film is based on the life and work of screenwriter Herman Mankiewicz. He wrote the screenplay of all-time classic Hollywood blockbuster Citizen Kane. Netflix led all outlets with 35 nods after a year in which the health crisis saw movie studios delay scores of new releases or send them to streaming platforms.
Dad, I'd like you to meet Laura.
Other Best Picture nods went to dementia drama The Father, Black Panther Story, Judas and the Black Messiah, Korean language drama Minari, Nomadland, #MeToo Revenge Tale, Promising Young Woman, deaf drama Sound of Metal, and 1960s Vietnam war courtroom drama The Trial of the Chicago 7, all of which got 6 nods in total. The announcements across the 23 categories were made by Priyanka Chopra Jonas and Nick Jonas on Monday from London through a virtual event. Another Round, a film from Denmark, is among the 5 movies nominated for the Foreign Language Film Academy Award. Directed by Thomas Winterberg, Another Round stars Mads Mikkelsen. A film about a group of teachers who make a pact to consume a small amount of alcohol each day in the hope it will improve the quality of their lives. Incidentally, it was the opening film at IFFI this year. A record 76 nominations went to women. It is for the first time that 2 women have been nominated for Best Director in the 93rd Academy Awards. Chloe Zhao has been nominated for Nomadland, while Emerald Fennell has been nominated for Promising Young Woman. The Oscars will be handed out at a ceremony in Los Angeles on the 25th of April and will take place at both the Dolby Theatre in Hollywood and for the first time at Union Station in downtown Los Angeles. The form of the ceremony is not yet known. DD India.
And that brings us to the close of this edition of Newsnight. Namaskar.